If anyone's listening from Councillor Wong Tam's office, we'd like to start the meeting. If I could ask members of the Toronto East York Community Council to take their seats, please. We'd like to begin. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I want to begin. The Chair and members of Toronto East York Community Council greatly acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Members, this morning, many of you will have heard the news that Ukrainian International Airlines Flight 752 crashed in Tehran shortly after takeoff. 176 passengers and 9 crew lost their lives, including 63 Canadians. I'd like it if members of the Community Council and the public could stand and observe a moment of silence. Thank you. To begin the meeting, can I ask if there are any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, can I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the meeting of December 3rd? Councillor Fletcher, thank you so much. All those in favour, opposed, carried. Members, will start our agenda run-through on page
12.20.
Yeah, on item 12.20, which is on page 31 and 32 of your orange sheets. Appointments to Business Improvement Area Board of Management.
Page 32.
Councillor Cressy will move it.
Happy to move the recommendations.
All those in favour, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.21, 900 Dufferin Street, Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Amendment Application, Preliminary Review. Councillor Bailao.
Move that with the expanded notice.
Do we have the expanded notification motion? Very good. All take it as a package. All those in favour, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.22, 888 DuPont Street, Official Plan Amendment and Zoning Amendment Application, Preliminary Report. Councillor Layton.
I have a motion on expanding the notification area, providing food. All those in favour?
Okay. So we'll take that as a package. All those in favour, opposed, carried.
I didn't list the restaurant.
Item TE 12.23, 24 to 26 Imperial Street, Zoning Amendment Application, Preliminary Report. Councillor Matlow.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that, Mr. Chair?
24 through 26 Imperial Street, it's item 23.
Oh, yeah. So I will move that with the expanded notice area.
Okay. With the expanded notice area, all those in favour, opposed, carried. Excuse me. Item TE 12.24. Councillor Matlow, sorry.
You know what?
Can we just take a moment and make sure we got the right motion there?
You know what, just hold it down for a
Just
moment.
1 second, sorry.
Well, we'll just, I can't do anything if Ellen isn't in her seat anyway, so.
That's the first time she's ever gotten it.
The motion we flashed is about all the stuff, childcare and all that. I don't think that's what you want to do.
For those who are watching, you're witnessing the fact that city councillors are incapable of achieving anything without the support of the clerk staff.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
Can we reconsider number 23?
Can I have a motion to reconsider item 23? Councillor Matlow, all those in favour, opposed, carried.
And then who's going to adopt the item?
Adopt the item without amendment?
Yeah, because the expanded notice is already built into the
So
I
because
didn't realize that now it's already baked in, so.
it's already baked in. So we'll just take the motion as presented. All those in favour, opposed, carried.
Yep.
Item TE 12.24, 111 through 125 River Street, official plan amendment and zoning amendment application and rental housing demolition applications preliminary report. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. I would ask the clerks to put the motion onto the screen. I may have also fallen into the trap of not recognizing that recommendation number 2 is already included, but certainly recommendation number 1 should be advanced, and that is that there be the provision of light refreshments as well as childcare and any accessibility accommodations provided at the meeting to be borne, that all costs be borne by the applicant. And then an additional recommendation 3 would stipulate that the applicant be working with the chief planner to ensure that there's a working group at the end of the process for a site plan agreement to ensure that we can have adequate built form changes and improvements to the area. Recommendation 4, specifically for this particular preliminary report, speaks to the need for the chief planner to continue to work with the applicant through the application review process to ensure that the conditional of approval, the rezoning approval, would also address any type of tenant hardships that are coming out of the displacement and relocation of the tenants by way of the demolition of their homes. And if I can just speak very briefly to this particular clause. It's come to my attention that we actually have tenants who are being displaced from this particular rezoning application on River Street. The tenant has claimed that she signed a N11 form to terminate, perhaps under duress, that she did not get adequate advice. And certainly this all took place prior to even the submission of the rezoning application, prior to any approval of the rezoning application, prior to the appeal process. We know that sometimes it takes years. These tenants have been asked to leave their home, and that one of those tenants is now living in a shelter known as 129 Peter Street. So the message to the applicant, to the developer, and all who are part of the land development assembly process is to follow the rules, to recognize that the City of Toronto is working under a housing crisis. We don't certainly need to see any additional hardships directed at the tenants. And I recognize that for the tenants who are not here to speak for themselves, who are not aware of what this planning process is even about, what they do know is that they are now without a home. They do know that they are struggling. They do know that they're having difficulty finding new accommodations. And they do also know that sometimes the option of affordable housing is not available to them. And for one tenant in particular, because of this application, she is now living in a shelter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll take Councillor Wong Tam's motions and the item together. All those in favour, opposed, carried. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Councillor Wong Tam. Members, while I'm on this, just so you'll know, if I could have the attention of members of Toronto East York Community Council. We have finally achieved a milestone here which is the standard one expansion of notice to 120 meters, is now standard in all preliminary reports. The planning staff have heard us, and we have prevailed. So you don't need to move that motion anymore.
What did we prevail on? The first,
The childcare one is the next hill.
Okay, so we still need to move the law.
Still need to move the childcare motion.
within 120 meters.
That's right, that's expanded notice.
But not everybody else. That's
60.
Yeah. No, I don't want to say wherever. That one, not everybody.
Okay. The next item, TE 12.26, 425? My apologies. If I could have just a little bit more quiet in the room. TE 12.25, 49 Ontario Street, zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Wong Tam.
Yes, thank you very much. This is the second of third preliminary reports for Ward 13. The first motion I would like to move is to ensure that we have the provision of light refreshments when people are coming to meeting post-work. They may have not had time to go get dinner. Childcare provision, accessibility accommodations, including sign language interpretation. Recommendation number 2 can be struck because we know that it's already included in the body of the report. And then recommendation number 3, the additional last recommendation is to ensure that we can create a site plan working group with the local community prior to any final approvals from staff.
Thank you very much. We'll take that as a package. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.26, 483 to 491 Bay Street and 20 Albert Street, zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you very much. This is number 3 preliminary report of 4 this meeting. Again, I'm moving exactly the same motions as the prior report. I don't think I need to repeat that. Again, it's around accommodations, and secondly, to create a site plan working group.
Okay, we'll take that as a package. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. Item TE 12.27, 20 through 26 Maitland Street, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Wong Tam.
Thank you. And once again, I will be moving the similar recommendation from item 2 and 3.
Okay, we'll take that again as a package. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Just one moment, please, members. Okay. Now we go to item 12.28. Which is Danforth Avenue Planning Study, City Initiated Official Plan Amendment, Preliminary Report, Broadview Avenue to Coxwell Avenue. Members, I'm informed by the planning staff that some of the necessary documentation for this has not been completed, and we will not be able to consider this item at this time. So I have a motion to defer it to the next meeting. There we are. So can I, all those in favor of deferral? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 12.29, 1684, 1698, 1700 and 1702, Queen Street East. Yeah. Queen Street East, zoning amendment application, preliminary report. Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much. I have a motion for expanded notice, but maybe
You don't need to do that.
now I don't need it.
That's right. So just move the report.
Okay, so move the report then, please.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 12.30, Yonge St. Clair Planning Framework. We have deputants, so we'll hold that. Item TE 12.31, Construction Staging Area Time Extension 4 Avenue Road. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move the recommendations in the report.
Okay, on the report, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.32, Construction Staging Area Time Extension 281 through 289 Avenue Road. Councillor Matlow. We're all having that morning.
Yeah, that probably spoke for many of us. I'm going to move this to council without recommendation at this point.
Okay, so I have a motion to forward it to Toronto City Council without recommendations. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.33, Installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, December 2019, delegated. I'll move that. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.34, installation of on-street accessible parking spaces, December 2019, non-delegated. Councillor Fletcher.
It's in my ward, I'll move.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.35, removal of accessible loading zone, Harvey Avenue. Councillor Bailao.
Approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.36, accessible loading zone, Lauder Avenue. Councillor Bailao.
Approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.37, Toronto and East York Collector Road Strategy, speed limit reduction as part of Vision Zero speed management strategy. There are a number of different motions. Members, would you prefer to hold this to do it, or do you just want to go run through the motions now?
Run through them.
If you could put,
If you have them.
Well, I got one just now, so I need to.
Okay.
oh, sorry, we've just had an additional motion, so I'm going to hold that in my name, and when we're ready, we'll come back to it.
Just to know.
Perhaps, Ellen, you could circulate the motions that you've received to date?
Yeah, if everyone's.
Could be me.
Yeah, just so that we have a chance to refresh our memories as to where we are? Okay. That's not urgent, you know, but by the time we're done,
Debs, I'll get that last
Yeah.
one done and they're all ready to go.
okay, and then circulate them so we can all see where we were. Thank you. Item TE 12.38, roadway alteration and traffic parking amendments, Dundas West and Howard Park. I'll move approval. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.39, parking amendments, Edna Avenue. That's I'll move that. The clerks thought, Councillor Bradford, that you had taken control of Ward 4, but you can't have it. So, on the item, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.40, parking amendment, Heath Street West. Councillor Matlow.
I move the recommendations.
On the recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.41, parking amendment, Oriole Parkway. Councillor Matlow.
Like to hold that, well, no, I'll move the staff recommendations.
On the recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.42, parking amendments, Carolyn Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
I would like to move to switch over and fix the parking on the east side of Caroline Avenue.
Do the staff recommendations achieve that?
Yes.
Okay, so on the staff recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.43, parking amendments, Riverdale Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
I'll also move the staff recommendation to have a small no parking area around the laneway exit.
Very good. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.44, parking amendments, Cavell Avenue. Councillor Fletcher.
I will move the recommendation for 1 hour parking between Pape and Carlaw.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.45, extension of permit parking hours, Felsted Avenue between Monarch Park Avenue and Parkmont Road. Councillor Fletcher.
The clerk doesn't have this, and I'll pass it over to her.
So
It
we'll
would be to
hold that.
defer indefinitely until there's a site visit I wish to do in there.
So defer indefinitely and
To
direct
accomplish a site visit,
to
yeah.
accomplish a staff, a site visit?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want me to work that language?
Yes, please.
So
Yeah.
we could also do defer until such time that.
That's fine. Yes,
Is that okay?
perfect.
So instead of
Okay.
deferring-
No, that's perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you, Ellen.
Okay. So on the motion to defer pending site visit, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.46, turn prohibitions, Belsize Drive. Councillor Matlow.
I move in favor of the recs.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.47, all-way stop control, Poplar Plains Road and Clarendon Avenue North intersection.
I move the recs.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.48, all-way stop control, Cedarvale Avenue and Virginia Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move alternate recommendations to install.
So we'll move the alternate recommendations which install. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.49, proposed installation of speed bumps, Angelone Lane between Glebemount Avenue and Woodmount Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
On the staff recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.50, proposed installation of speed bumps, Paul Estrella Lane between Woodmount Avenue and Woodbine Avenue. Councillor Bradford.
I'd like to move the staff recommendations, please.
On the staff recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.51, installation of speed humps on Dover Court Road between Dundas Street West and Queen Street West. Councillor Bailão.
Oh, sorry, it's 51.
It's just
First
50.
we have to add
Oh,
51 to 58.
sorry.
Yeah.
I need a motion to introduce items 51 through 58. Councillor Matlow, all those in favor, opposed, carried. We'll run through them. Item TE 12.51, installation of speed humps on Dover Court Road between Dundas Street West and Queen Street West. Councillor Bailão.
Approve the recommendations on the letter.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.52, parking amendments, Earlsdale Avenue. Councillor Bailão.
Approve recommendations on the letter.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.53, Lawton Area Pickup and Drop-Off Zone. Councillor Bailão.
Approve recommendations.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Look, more correspondence from Councillor Bailão. Item TE 12.54, speed limit reductions, Peterborough Avenue through between Dufferin Street and Greenlaw Avenue. Councillor Bailão.
Please approve recommendations in the letter.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. My goodness, TE 12.55, recession of eastbound, no right on red prohibition on St. Clair Avenue West at Lansdowne Avenue. Councillor Bailão.
Approve recommendations in the letter.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. And finally, TE 12.56, parking amendments, Wallace Avenue. Councillor Bailão.
Approve recommendations in the letter.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Members, you'll be happy to know that the City of Toronto is going to be publishing the collected correspondence of Councillor Bailão in short order.
May I,
It'll be a
may I ask
bestseller.
a point of order?
I have two more.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That
Item
would be
TE
it.
12.57, parking amendment, Critchley Lane. Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move the recommendations in the letter.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.58, reopening item TE 11.55, speed hump poll results, College View Avenue.
So I move my letter, which is a
So I
reopening.
first
and
need a
then
motion to reopen.
Both move.
My motion is to
So, On the
reopen,
motion to reopen,
and
favor,
then
opposed, carried.
the motion within the letter.
and now the motion in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay. There was one we needed to get back to, wasn't there? Oh, no, you're going to get that circulated. Yeah, okay. So that takes us to item TE 12.1.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have some new business I'm trying to get introduced.
Has it been circulated to the members yet?
Been given to the clerk.
Given to the clerk?
Just where's my new submission? You just
So
got
we
it.
haven't had a
Staff have to
chance.
enter it in the system, so.
Oh, have my
So-
staff sent it to you? Electronic? I'll make sure they do.
Nicholas sent me this one.
Okay,
So we'll,
thank you.
if you
I got
could
it.
take care of that
All right.
separately?
I will, thank you.
Okay. Members, so we now turn to our 9:30 items, beginning with TE 12.1, naming of an existing public lane north of Bloor Street West, extending westerly from Brock Avenue. I have a deputant listed, Barbie Lazarus. Barbie? You're here for 12.3? And you're listed there as well. Okay, very good. Are there any members of the public who want to make a deputation on item 12.1? Seeing none. I've lost Councillor Bailao. Councillor Bailao, if we could just dispose of the public naming of the lane north of Bloor Street from Westerly to Brock. Will the IT staff connect you to the worldwide?
If we can approve the staff on the recommendations.
On the recommendations from staff, all those in favor, opposed, carried. There's a strange man crawling around.
What's wrong?
He's fixing the IT.
He's wearing a very attractive beret, if anyone's curious. Item TE 12.2, naming of an existing public lane west of Widmer Street, extending southerly from Adelaide Street West. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cressy.
I will move the recommendations.
On the recommendations, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.3, 299 Glen Lake Avenue, zoning bylaw amendment application, final report. Barbie, perhaps you could come forward now. Okay. Yeah, you just put that up as if you were looking at it. Perfect. Okay, yeah. And if you want to just take your seat, you can just sit in the seat there so we can we can hear you through the microphone. Make sure the red button in front of you is lit up. Okay, Barbie, you'll have 5 minutes and you can watch your time on the clock over here to my right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
We could have a little quiet, please.
So I've been a resident of this apartment neighborhood for about 12 years now, and I'm happy to tell you I'm not here to yell at you or be angry about this proposal, but I'm really just, politely asking you to reconsider approving the rezoning at this time and first request some modifications to the proposal. I was at the first public meeting about this proposal, and I do see that some of the issues highlighted were addressed, but most of the changes that were addressed since the meeting seem to do with the interior of the building. So they did address accessibility, indoor amenities, and I'm happy with the change of unit types, having more 2 bedrooms and some 3 bedrooms. But the real issue that I still have with the proposal and others in this area is that the floor plate of the building is still too big, and despite the city's report that claims otherwise, it looks to me like this proposal virtually removes all of the green space on the site, including a number of many mature trees and important habitat for wildlife at this corner of Glen Lake and Pacific. So I don't know how much time city staff who wrote this report have spent on that site, and if they lived in the area, they would know that when you're walking by, you're walking your dog, you're sitting on the grass there, that green space does provide important habitat for birds. You can hear blue jays all the time, and that corner is also used sometimes by the community for things like yard sales. So the report does say that the owner agrees to provide an on-site privately owned, publicly accessible open space, but it says that the final location, size, design, and program of that will be discussed after the approval process, if I'm understanding correctly. So I'm, I guess, confused about how if the location and size is not part of the approved proposal, it seems kind of meaningless to me. So I would like to see the city have a required size for the green space that they're going to keep, and make it larger than what's in the current design, and ensure that the location of that POPS maximizes the mature trees on the site to be preserved. A couple other things I wanted to note out. In the report, it does say that Toronto Official Plan Section 2.3.1, Healthy Neighborhoods, says that apartment neighborhoods are residential areas considered to be physically stable, and development in these areas should be consistent with respecting the existing open space patterns in the area. Policy 3.2.3.1 says that maintaining and enhancing, expanding the park system requires the following actions, and then one of them, letter C, says protecting access to the existing publicly open spaces and developing open space linkages. And then policy 4.2.3, it states that compatible infill development may be permitted on an existing site, but that it will, and then letter D, maintain adequate sunlight, privacy, and areas of landscaped open space for new and existing residents. So I don't find that the current plan does this because even though it's shorter in height than the main tower, the podium still creates a face-to-face situation where you have one building that's directly fronting another. And that podium is so big that, again, it removes all of the green space on the site. So I think that if the podium could be removed and just the tower kept, that would allow...
Ask for some quiet, please. Keep going.
Thank you. So if the podium was removed, which, you know, wouldn't remove too many units from the proposal, and the towers kept, then there could be more green space at the corner of that intersection that could remain, and it would be a lot more in line with the current open space patterns in the neighborhood, where you don't have one building fronting another. So the existing pattern in the neighborhood, for example, you should still be able to see the entrance to 299 Glen Lake from the street. The other thing I wanted to note in the report is that there's a lot of talk in the report and other reports, other proposals in this neighborhood about programming these green spaces with outdoor amenities. And the reason I have these photos here is I was at the first public meeting about this. Is the Daniels building that fronts Bloor Street between Oakmount and Pacific. And I was at the very first public meeting about this building. If you guys could be quiet, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to concentrate. And I think this was a really model example of the developer listening to the public. They revised their proposal, and you can see how much green space they preserved on this site. So this is the north side of the building. This is like, so they created, a very simple, passive green space with just a couple of benches. They kept a lot of mature trees. They kept just a plain sort of open grassy area. And so again, what I like about this is that it's not overly developed or fancy. It's just a quiet green space with big trees. So we already have, High Park that has lots of amenities and playgrounds. Lithuania Park is almost kitty corner across
Can I
the
ask you to wind up?
Sure. Is just across the street from there, and that already has a splash pad, a baseball diamond, and a playground. So with all this infill development in our neighborhood, what we really need to preserve is quiet, passive green space.
Thank you
like
very
this.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question for you before you go. I just want to make sure, there was a lot in there, but I want to make sure I got the key points. You're concerned that the floor plate will affect the amount of green space and trees?
Yes.
That the floor plate creates a problem in terms of facing distances?
Yes.
You want a better understanding of the location and size of the green space? And those were the key points you made, right?
Yes, and just the final one is that like I think in the proposal they talked again about sort of programming what green space is preserved, and I would prefer to see it kept explicitly mentioned as a more passive green space, just a place to sit.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much, Barbie.
Thank you.
Suzanne McDonald.
Good morning. I'm Suzanne McDonald from SGL Planning and Design. I'm the planner representing the applicant on this file. We really wanted to come up here today to thank planning staff for their work on this application. We fully support the staff report as well as staff's recommendation, including the withdrawal of the appeal as written. This proposal was developed in tandem with the High Park neighborhood apartment character area study. We participated as part of the study on the working group. As well, at the same time as this, we also worked with planning staff on our application and met with them many times, discussed it with them, and made multiple revisions. As a result, our proposal fully conforms with the policies of OPA 419 and SAS 551, including those related to setbacks to the street, setbacks between buildings, the height of the building, and the requirement that 65% of the site be maintained as open space. As well, in response to comments and discussions with city staff and members of the public, a number of improvements to the existing building is proposed, as described in the recommendations in the staff report, which we also support. Unless there's any specific questions, we just would like to thank staff again for their work on and help on this project, and look forward to working with them further with council's support through the site plan process.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Seeing none? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom Dempsey. Morning, Tom.
Good morning. Morning, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year 2020. Whoa.
So Tom, you've got 5 minutes, and you can watch your time over there on the clock on the wall to my right.
So my name is Tom Dempsey, and I'm a retired science teacher who lives in a building next to the right next to the proposed development at 299 Glen Lake. This corner lot, southwest corner of Glen Lake and Pacific Avenue, contains a substantial biological community with a mix of 15 healthy trees, shrubs, and green space with significant value. This green space is part of a natural wildlife corridor connecting the railroad tracks just north of Dundas with High Park just to the south. So this is a natural wildlife corridor. While walking my dog Shamrock on evening walks, we have seen coyote, foxes, raccoons, and skunks in close proximity to this green area, green space. So during the day, we sometimes see semi-rare birds such as cardinals and finches looking for nesting space. Squirrels and sparrows are abundant in this area. Hawks fly overhead and land in the trees at times. So biologically, it's a green stamp, smaller than High Park, but this is an important stamp in our neighborhood. It's the biggest green area around High Park, at least in that vicinity. Okay, recent studies have discovered the dangers of dust. That's the dangers of dust in heavy construction areas. This can cause lung disease and cancer. There's crystalline silica in the sand and mortar and bricks, and this releases dust, which can lead to a disease called silicosis. This has been documented in the Toronto Star research recently. My neighbor, Sid, is extremely concerned about this dangerous pollution with the dust and the noise. There's lots of people that live right next to this, lots of people. And the potential loss of green space is important in today's world. Another of my neighbors, Madeline, is also highly concerned about the dangerous dust and noise from the proposed developments. Also, the loss of visitor parking and the effects which double density would have for safety in the crowded High Park subway station during rush hours especially. During nice weather, lots of families who live nearby with children and dogs picnic and play here. During heavy rainstorms, and we are getting more of those, there's dangerous amounts of water runoff in the non-green areas, endangering pedestrians walking on the sidewalks. I've almost got washed off my feet walking up High Park when the water streams out of the driveways coming north along High Park. So this whole community is being affected by the massive development. We're extremely dense in this High Park community the way it is, and the massive rain runoffs in the developed areas over the sidewalks, into the streets, into the sewers, and from there, there's infrastructure deficiencies in the sewer systems, which sends a lot of dirty water directly into Lake Ontario. And this has been happening for many years, and it gets worse with the heavy rainfalls. Local schools like the Kiel Primary and Humberside Collegiate are filled to capacity, and anybody moving into this neighborhood who has students, there's going to be busing requirements to different area schools. There's other infrastructure deficiencies which may include water and electrical water supply and water treatment, electrical grid, and the ability of the sandy soil just to support the additional massive developments in the addition to the buildings already there in case of earthquakes or underground garage collapse. That could be really terrible. There's huge buildings there. Okay, in summary, I believe that these proposed developments in the High Park community to decrease green space and double the density is short-sighted and dangerous to humans and non-humans alike. the dangers from the dust of heavy construction, and the irreplaceable loss of green
I'm going to have to ask you just to finish your last sentence, okay?
Okay, in this wildlife corridor can be avoided by voting against the proposed developments in the High Park community.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question for you. I just want to make sure I heard your concerns correctly. You're concerned about the impact ecologically on the various species present, dust control, visitor parking, runoff into the sewer system, school capacity, electrical capacity, and the stability of the buildings, the engineering of the buildings.
As well as the pollution that, the dust, the dangerous dust that can be...
Yes, I got the dust point, yeah.
Right.
Okay, is that the list of things you're concerned about?
That's the main list, and
Okay.
I'm really concerned, and I hope that you'll consider these when you're voting for this and the other developments proposed in the High Park area.
Okay. Just as a note, the other developments were dealt with at the last council meeting. They're not before us now. They were already approved. Okay? All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I have Margaret Van Dyck. Hi, Margaret. Where are you? There you go. Now, you have experience with this. I don't have to give you the whole rundown, right?
I'll talk to you.
There you go.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Margaret Van Dyck, Van Dyck in Dutch, but I'll take the English version. And I'm a retired community college teacher. We've already heard some very good presentations from Barbie Lazarus and Mr. Dempsey here. I want you all, though, to think very carefully because you are all involved. Every single one of us here is
Margaret,
guilty.
can I ask you to get a little bit more close to your microphone?
Everyone here is guilty about the state of the planet. We're watching Australia burn. We're hearing people saying, how is it Scott Morrison took no notice of the scientists, the fire chiefs, the people who told him about research that was done in the area? How is it indeed when Toronto City Council also pays no attention to the research that's available on tall buildings and high density? How is it when Ontario votes for people like Thug Fraud and get rid of all the green space he could? So I don't think any of us here have any way of feeling self-righteous just because we don't have fires burning at the moment. We will have floods, we will have wind tunnels, we will have respiratory diseases. Nobody here seems to care about particulate matter, mercury, carbon dioxide, all these things. They're all written about. I have a reading list. There's research done, fine research done in Hong Kong. The Chinese won't listen to it from mainland China, but it's excellent from Hong Kong Polytechnic, developed the Hedley Environmental Index. We should all think about that. I remember a time when Toronto used to care about the height of buildings, when John Sewell was here. Now we won't call birds like cardinals and finches something or other, semi-present. They should always be here. We should keep pedestrian comfort. Wind tunnels are a major problem with high density. When you had the two towers down in New York, Nicholas Yarmov from Western University wrote about the dangers of the wind there and how nobody could sit out for pleasure in the plaza. We have many people in Canada writing fine research, but does anyone listen to them? No. I can give you a whole look. The developers just want profit. The planet is being destroyed by greed and willful ignorance. And I don't care about the shareholders. I care about the place I live and the people who live round near me. I care about the community. I hope you all start to do the same. We need affordable housing, but there are other ways of doing it, and you don't have to do sky-high developments that are owned by people who are not even, they're non-DOMs, they don't even live in the country. So I hope you will consider a threatened infrastructure and a limit on the density you're putting into one spot. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to questions of staff. So a couple of questions. First of all, a general question. So this application fell within some planning guidelines developed in a special area plan for the area. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, yes.
Yeah, and you participated in the development of that. So you have spent, I know, an awful lot of time on site and in meetings about the overall impact of development in this area.
Yes, I was the lead planner for.
You were the lead planner on that. So you know each of the individual buildings and the overall site, and you spent a great deal of time thinking about the future of this area.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the study was a very robust study. It involved extensive community consultation, and I was involved through the whole
And
process.
it won a planning award, didn't it?
It did.
Yes. So in that study, does it look at issues about maintaining ecological integrity in the area?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the study requires NHIS to be completed. The policies have certain policies requirements as well for ecological issues.
So this area uniquely has rules about
It does.
the ecological impact of development.
SAS 551 does integrate an entire section dealing with the natural environment and in response to principles.
And it has policies around maintaining open space?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
The SAS requires 6-meter unencumbered soils in the front along the lot frontages so that water infiltration can take place, mature trees can develop.
And just the policy also, the review of the application confirmed that we will have sufficient visitor parking. Toronto Water staff looked at the sewer's ability to handle.
Yeah. All the technical,
All the,
Mr. Chair,
the electrical work was done, the engineering
all the technical
support.
studies have been confirmed by our various technical members
Okay.
at the city.
All right.
And the site conforms with all of the policies and guidelines that were developed as an outcome of the study.
Okay, and the final question, there will be, during the construction management phase of this application, work done to control and mitigate dust from the construction of the site.
There will be, through you, Mr. Chair, there will be a construction management plan developed that will address those items.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions of staff? No? So first of all, I have a motion that I need to make on this item. So members, I'm moving two things here. First, we've received correspondence both from the Catholic District School Board and the Toronto District School Board concerned about the capacity of local area schools, and they have the standard warning clauses that they want attached to inform any potential purchaser or renter at this building that there may not be school capacity in the immediate area. We've seen those before on other buildings. And there's a technical amendment to the zoning bylaw to make sure that the 45-degree angular plane is from Glen Lake is taken care of. It is taken care of. This merely puts it into the zoning bylaw, sort of a belts and suspenders kind of thing. So I'd like to move those two amendments and then move approval of the staff recommendations. Members, this area, the High Park, the area north of High Park, that apartment neighborhood, as you heard in answers from planning staff, actually won a national award for planning in an apartment neighborhood just this year. It's one of the most thorough treatments of maintaining an open and green feel and maintaining ecological integrity of any secondary plan the City of Toronto has ever done. And what's interesting about this particular development is that it was developed in parallel to that secondary plan and conforms entirely to the principles in that secondary plan. That secondary plan is quite an achievement, and it's something that I think we should acknowledge as a good victory here in the City of Toronto. None of us likes the fact that there is development coming into the City of Toronto, but we have to remember, as one of the deputants talked about, the ecological consequences of how we develop are always important to bear in mind. And that's why intensifying within urban areas is always to be preferred over additional urban sprawl, whose ecological impacts are much more severe, much more vast, and much more troublesome when we're concerned particularly about climate change than intensification of existing neighbourhoods. So on that basis, I'm going to ask you to support this application with these two amendments. Are there any questions of the mover or anyone else to speak? No? So we'll take that as a package. All those in favour? Opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to item, I've lost my green sheet, took it away from me.
I did take my green sheet. No, I didn't.
To item 12.4. There we go. Which is the Spadina Secondary Plan Update Final Report. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, are questions of staff? No? Councillor Cressy.
I just had one question of staff, if that's all right. How many years have our tremendous staff in city planning been working on the final report for the Spadina Secondary Plan?
Chair, through the chair, it's been over a decade that we've been working on this study.
Thank you very much.
Sure. To speak. Please, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. So I am delighted to move the recommendations in the report here to, after, as we heard from staff, more than a decade, bring the Spadina Secondary Plan to completion. And if members of this committee would indulge me for 2 minutes, I'd like just to say a few words on Spadina, as I've done before. It's really a little piece of history which I love around Spadina is that if we go back to the early days of our city and the town of York beforehand, where we had the downtown east was the site of the Parliament buildings and a lot of the early residential neighborhoods. The downtown west, you couldn't build west of Peter Street because that's how far the cannon shot from the fort. And so when you look at Victoria Memorial Square, the location of that cemetery prior to the emergence of Draper Street and residence was because of the fort. This was very much our origins. And you can trace the history of our city in many ways in Spadina. The growth of manufacturing alongside the railway, the decline of manufacturing and the emergence of surface level parking lots, and then in the mid-90s, the regeneration zone to spur what is now a vibrant mixed-use downtown neighborhood. And so it's been, well, almost 30 years since we've had a comprehensive update in Spadina. And I think it's fair to say, everybody would know it, that regeneration is complete. It's now we are into a mixed-use neighborhood, and a successful one. 945 people living here in 96, for 22,000 2 years ago. It's probably 26,000 today and growing, and it just carries on and on. And the vision as set out here is for a mixed-use neighborhood. It's for a livable neighborhood. It's for a vibrant neighborhood that includes culture. And I won't belabor all the specifics around the different precincts we've identified and the planning rationale around heights and setbacks and the livability, but just to say that this has been a decade in the works. It is done in concert with TO Core very appropriately, and I'm delighted that it's moving forward, and I want to commend our City of Toronto planning staff. Those who've been working on this for 10 years, those who've come in to get us over the finish line, my deepest gratitude. And I'm glad that this is complete. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the mover? Any other members to speak? Seeing none on the item, all those in favor, opposed, carried. That takes us to Item 12.5.
Sorry, sir.
All I do is sit here and have people hand paper to me. Item TE 12.5, 250 Dundas Street West zoning bylaw amendment application, final report. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, questions of staff? Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. Could you just briefly describe your position as laid out in the report? Is the proposal as it's finally come in consistent with the downtown secondary plan and other cities' policies related to where density should be and what it should look like?
Through the chair, yes, in response to the question, our staff's position is that the proposal represents an appropriate redevelopment of the site in close proximity to a transit corridor along a street intended for tall buildings and with appropriate mitigation to adjacent residential developments.
And are you happy with the height that the tower portion landed on with respect to it being in mixed-use area 2 in relation to the buildings that have currently under construction just east and also approved just west?
Yeah, there was careful consideration of the height regime in respect to policies relating to transition from west to east. So where we landed with 250 Dundas was, we feel, an appropriate transition from the building to the east at 480 University and the building to the west at 292 Dundas, and then appropriately scaled down to the building to the north at 1 Park Place.
Could you comment, because one of the core issues around this site was the shadowing of the podium on an existing courtyard in between the buildings that are to the north of the proposed site. Can you comment on what the impacts of those of the proposed shadowing are compared to the as of right of the building on the site?
Sure. So we spent a lot of time working on the base building for this project, and originally the base building was slightly higher. We were attempting to balance the objectives of replacing and expanding upon office uses in the area, while at the same time ensuring that we weren't creating adverse impacts on the courtyard of the condominium to the north. Where we landed on was that the base building is exactly or within a meter of what the as-of-right height is for this property. We were also careful to ensure that the sculpting of that base building worked to help preserve the existing vegetation in that courtyard, the building to the north. I think certainly there were folks who would have hoped for a lower base building, but I think meeting the city's objectives with respect to mixed-use buildings adjacent to transit nodes, so ensuring that there's not only replacement of employment but expansion of employment, while at the same time ensuring that there were no additional adverse impacts on the condominium to the north, we think we landed on the right spot.
And these would be arguments that would be put forward by an applicant that was appealing a decision to the board, that the application as it's brought in is consistent with city policy. And
it would be very difficult for us to request an applicant to go below the as-of-right height for a base building. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions of staff? No, seeing none. Councillor Layton to speak.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a motion. That technically will send this to council. This is item number 5, which will send it without recommendation to council and some direction to staff to report directly to the January 29th council meeting with the supplemental report reflecting amendments to the Section 37 contribution by increasing the affordable housing units from 22 to 25, which brings us to 5%. And then there's an additional public realm amount as well in there. Listen. There is no denying that this is an appropriate site for density. It's close to public transit. It's consistent with the downtown secondary plan. What's difficult is, it would also be very difficult to argue at the local planning appeal tribunal that that this application is not in keeping with the spirit of the city's existing policy, which is what the test would be. What's problematic is how some of our policies impact very unique situations. And on this one, it's an existing built context to the north that will be tremendously impacted by the base building. I think that what staff have tried to do, however, is try to make the best of what is, I think, an unfortunate situation where we have a green space that will be surrounded by tall buildings, by existing tall buildings that were built when the green space was built. I can't imagine that at the time they didn't contemplate the as of right height of the building to the south that will have such a profound impact on that space. I'd like to thank city staff for their work on this. They were creative in their approach to try to reduce the impact on some of this space and really pushed the developer to present what the actual impacts of some of these of some of the various iterations of the proposal that came forward would in fact be. But I'm not ignoring the fact that there are some problematic issues related to this application with respect to the existing neighborhood to the north. The problem is, as you've heard from our city staff, it would be incredibly difficult to argue anything else. And so we make the best of that situation. In this case, that's ensuring 5% of the new building that's built is affordable housing, as in keeping with the definition that the city currently uses. So I'm happy to move this motion and see it move forward to council.
While Councillor Layton still has his voice, all those
hear
in
my
favor?
voice? No, you can't.
Opposed? Carried. Oh, you have a question of
I
him?
do. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want
You're just going to keep it here, like, we're just going to watch his temperature increase slowly but
I don't want to
surely.
keep Councillor Layton's voice going for too long, but I do have a question regarding the number of units that are going from 22 to 26, and by way of increasing the number of units, it looks like the market rents are going to be now adjusted to 90% from 80% of market rents. Are you using that 10% variance to increase the number of units?
So yes, but it also, I'm told that it increased the overall value of the package as well. So we wanted to see the number higher. The developer came back and said we can do that, but only if we increase the average market rent. But I'm told that the Affordable Housing Office was favorable to this arrangement as well, because what they saw was an increase in the total value of what was being presented to the city through the Section 37.
And by way of the affordable rents now being defined as 90% of AMR, which I think it could be disputed. However, my question is this 90% of AMR captured in perpetuity? And is it the City of Toronto that will retain ownership of these affordable units?
It's not the city that will retain ownership of the affordable units. I believe it's in keeping. If that it is?
No, you're right.
Yes. Okay. It's not. No, they're not in perpetuity.
Who will own those units?
It's a rental building, and the developer who will be owning the building will own the units and be responsible for renting them out at those.
And then finally, just to capture, is there a term limit to the 90% of the AMR?
Yes, it's 30 years. It's consistent with the city's existing not housing now policy, open doors policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? So on Councillor Layton's motion to send it to council without recommendations and request the necessary report, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. That takes us to item TE 12.6, 112 College Street Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Final Report. I have a Deputant Emma West. Hello, Emma.
So, I mean, she could do something like that.
Good morning, Emma. So you'll have 5 minutes. I know you know the drill here. Please start.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of committee. I'm Emma West, a partner at Bousfields, a planning consultant for the University of Toronto for this application. We have reviewed the staff report and the recommendations, and I'm here to say that we support them. I would like a few minutes to address one of the letters that was submitted with respect to the application, specifically the letter from Infrastructure Ontario. So you'll know that this application is for an institutional building for the University of Toronto located at College and Queen's Park. And to the north of the site are provincially owned properties. Several government officials have been involved in the discussions surrounding this application, including ministers at various ministries, economic development, infrastructure, finance, and the Treasury Board. They've all been briefed on the project, and the university has received nothing but an excited response from these government officials. So the letter that was received from Infrastructure Ontario staff raised some concerns with respect to setback and separation distances, tower separation, and shadow impacts, in particular on the child care center outdoor spaces that are located on the two provincial properties to the north. I'm just going to briefly address these comments from Infrastructure Ontario staff and say that we worked quite closely with city staff and appreciate the efforts to have reviewed, in particular, the setbacks on the north side of the property, where in the initial application, the building was actually located closer to the north property line. And in response to comments from city staff, we pulled the building back away from the north property line so that it was on an angle away from the north property line, closer at the northeast corner than the northwest corner, with an average setback at grade of 9 meters from the north property line. And on the upper floor of this 13-story building is 13.6 meters from the north property line. At the northeast corner in particular, where the building is closest to the north property line, the setback at grade is 4 meters and 8.5 meters at the upper floor. And as I said, we worked through this with staff, had various meetings with Infrastructure Ontario staff as well, and staff were supportive of these setbacks. We also completed a detailed tower separation study and determined that the Infrastructure Ontario, the provincial property sites to the north, were constrained not only by heritage, but by the shadow impacts on Queen's Park itself. Staff also concluded in their report that they did not see these provincial properties as tall building sites. With respect to the shadow impacts on the outdoor spaces for the child care centers, we did submit a shadow impact study, and it demonstrated that even in some instances, the as-of-right condition would actually be worse than what is being proposed because of how this building will be sited and pulled back from the north property line. At most, there is a 1-hour increased shadow impact for the proposal, briefly between in June for the Frost site, which is the provincial building just to the north. So to conclude, in my opinion, this proposal is consistent with and conforms to provincial policies and plans, as well as the city's official plan and urban design guidelines. It's appropriate, represents good planning, and we support staff's report and their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? No? Questions of staff? Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you very much. There's a pending secondary plan report coming for the University of Toronto, correct?
as far as I understand it, yes, that is.
That was a question to our staff.
Thank you for your effort to help.
But that was good. That was good. You could probably do.
Okay. Enough with the fun.
Through you, Chair, yes, there is a pending report that will be coming this year.
And are the recommendations in this report consistent with what will be coming forward in that report for this site?
Yes, they would be consistent with what we would likely be recommending for this site, and we're going to build on those through the update to the secondary plan and design guidelines to ensure that there's additional open space, appropriate separation, all of these important things will be secured in that way as well.
Is there a reason why we're entertaining an application or putting forward a recommendation when we're just hopefully months away from a secondary plan?
So the existing secondary plan for the University of Toronto area does identify development sites across the campus, and this site was always identified as a potential development site. And there's existing policy direction in the secondary plan that says through the submission of a zoning bylaw amendment, you can apply to increase the height and density of those potential development sites that were identified. And we felt that through the review of this application, it was consistent with the direction that we were moving in for this site and in the direction that we have talked about at many different consultation meetings for the secondary plan for this area of the campus. So we didn't have a concern with making this recommendation at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? No? Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move the staff recommendations and just very, very briefly congratulate the University of Toronto on an exciting project moving forward. It was, I guess, about a year ago when there was a very exciting announcement made about a contribution to the university that would be going to this facility, and this will forever change the face of Queen's Park. That's for certain. But I think with the architecture will do so in a quite dramatic and positive way. I will comment simply to say that given the constant shadow that is over Queen's Park these days, I don't think an extra hour is going to have much of an impact. But I'm glad that the applicant took it seriously and has ensured that it will be limited, because we do know that brighter days are ahead.
You're a funny guy. So, on the item, all those in favor, opposed, carried. I will next call TE 12.7, 1151 Queen Street East, zoning amendment final report. I have a deputant, Michael Bissett. If I could just make sure that someone alerts Councillor Fletcher that we're on this item, please. We could just, call her or something. Good morning, Michael. You'll have 5 minutes.
I'm Michael Bissett from Housefield, partner at Housefields, and I'm here on behalf of Hallmark, the applicant. Just in brief, it's 47 new purpose-built rental units on what was a 7-Eleven at Larchmont and Queen, just east of Carlaw on Queen Street. The application is 6 stories, 20 meters in height. There's the councillor. Consistent with the recently approved OPA 469. We have reviewed the staff report, and are in support of its recommendations. I'm here just in summary to say I'm here to answer any questions that may be available.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you, Michael. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, are there any questions of staff? No? Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I have a lengthy motion. I don't know if there it is there, for basically around the construction requirements. It's a very dense neighborhood. It's right by a school. So having this a platinum construction project is pretty important, as well to exempt the permit parking and to let anybody who's buying there know. This was one of the many 7-Eleven sites that were closed down. I think we all had those, and some of them are still just boarded up. One on the Danforth is a horrible boarded up, graffitied location, and this is, for me, the first 7-Eleven site that I've seen come in, and it meets all the requirements. The community is very supportive. Currently is operating as a art gallery, so that will be a sad moment when that gets closed down. But this is up for approval, and it's gone through everything, and it's the 6 stories. So that's it. I'll move approval with those motions, Mr.
Okay, so we'll take it all as one vote. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. The next item is TE 12.8, 507, 509, 511 Kingston Road, official plan amendment, zoning amendment applications, final report. I have some deputants listed. First, Dave Budge. Dave? Morning. Just settle in there. Make sure that the light is on in front of your microphone.
Yes.
You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on the wall over here to my right.
Thank you.
Please start.
Good morning. Thank you for hearing us and for having us here. I didn't expect to be speaking first, but I'll do my best. I know that some of the other residents on the block in their presentations will speak to the size and the scale of this development proposal, the access or the proximity to the property line, and so on. And I will leave it to them to speak to those issues in greater detail and with greater authority than me, and just say that I very strongly agree with the points that they will make. Instead, I'll start with briefly with a personal perspective. My wife and I have been in the home at the south end of the dead end on Wheeler, affected by this development for a little over 5 years. I sank everything I had and everything I could borrow into buying a house on the street, partly because the street is what it is. It's a tiny, narrow little dead end with no sidewalks and very little parking. But despite that, one where the many kids on the street can safely walk to and from school and can play in the street because it's a close knit community and because there's very little traffic. This proposal, which gives the units in the development pedestrian access to Wheeler, would inevitably bring service vehicles and couriers and skip the dishes, Uber Eats, Ubers, taxis, friends who are looking for a parking space driving up and down a street that doesn't have a turnaround at the end. It will dramatically change the character of the street, and not just the character of it, but I strongly caution that it will affect the safety of the kids in the neighborhood, and it seems to be very directly at odds with the Vision Zero initiative of the cities. And I say it's inevitable that the development and the pedestrian access from the development would bring that traffic because it's so difficult to park on Kingston Avenue. There's no way anybody that knows that stretch of Kingston Avenue knows that parking there, delivering there is going to be a serious issue for the residents in that building. And if they have access to Wheeler Avenue, that's going to be the default option. This is frustrating for us because the earlier development proposal a couple of years ago had no pedestrian access in the proposal, and our understanding was that the city planner attached to it at the time wouldn't approve pedestrian access. This proposal from a different developer reduced the height and the scale of the building, but is actually worse than the initial one because it has that pedestrian access. And that inconsistency from city staff from one planner to the next doesn't, frankly, inspire confidence. It's also, to me personally, offensive that the proposal essentially uses the Kingston Road address to sell luxury units based on the access to Wheeler Avenue under this proposal, and I think that's just wrong. Now, despite everything I'm saying, and despite the fact that what's currently sky and trees in the northern horizon from my house will become a big, ugly building. I'm not actually opposed to development. You know, I know the city needs to increase density. We need to accommodate rapidly growing population. I just really strongly believe we need to do that right and do it in a way that doesn't trick the system and do it in a way that potentially endangers people's safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputy? No? Thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. Next, I have Marissa Nelson. Morning, Marissa. Just put whatever it is you want us to see on the, don't touch anything, just put it on. The nice AV man will make it all work. And just put whatever you'd like to show us face up as if you were looking at it. And it's magic.
There we go. Great.
Thank you. You'll have 5 minutes and you can watch your time on the clock on the wall to my right over there.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Marissa Nelson. I live at the corner of Juniper and Wheeler. I think the important part for this committee to understand is this is an incredibly unusual property. As Dave Budge said, we're not opposed to development on Kingston Road. We need intensification. But this particular property has two sets of zoning. The front half, which is zoned on Kingston Road, respects the Kingston Road context. The back half of the property respects the lower Wheeler level context. And I think it's important for you to understand the context of this particular property. The Wheeler dead end has zero turnaround at the end. It was created in the mid-1800s. This photo that I'm showing you here is actually outside my dining room window. So this is the width of the Wheeler Avenue. What I would say is it's almost a laneway because it is so narrow. We have 19 kids that live on this little dead end, and every day we have children intermingling with traffic because they have to walk through traffic in order to get to school because there are no sidewalks and there is no capacity, as you can see, to put sidewalks in. The other thing I would say is probably once a month we do not get city services on our street because somebody has parked either legally with a disabled parking permit on the east side of this street or illegally, particularly construction trucks. And what ends up happening is the garbage trucks, salt and snow trucks can't get up. They already, as you can see here, this is reversing. This is the garbage truck on December 31st reversing up Wheeler. And just this summer we had firemen, instead of bringing the fire truck up the dead end, they decided to walk up to investigate an open burn complaint because they didn't want to have the hassle of actually having to get the truck up our tiny little dead-end street. As previously has been said, is that the city planner, the previous city planner heard our feedback, and the previous design had only emergency access for the rear. At the moment, what we're seeing is that they're trying to take advantage of the access to the lower community, and if you want to have access to the lower community, you need to respect integrating into the lower community, and this proposal doesn't do that. So we feel a bit like if you're gonna integrate with our community, live up to the zoning bylaws that are already on the back part of that property. If you want to have a Kingston Avenue property, that's great, but you need to respect that it's a Kingston Road property. A few other points that the neighborhood is concerned about is that the setback is on the rear is 0. They're measuring the setback from Kingston Road, so the setback on the back is 0. We're very concerned because that dead end actually at the moment has virtually the only green space that we have within sort of a 4-block radius is at the end of this dead end. The other thing I would just say, because I know it will come to this committee later, is we can't have construction happen from this tiny dead end. You can imagine little children walking amongst all of the construction vehicles, the pickup trucks, the cement, the diggers, and all of that. As I said, like you can see my house, which is behind this gray van, there's about a 36-inch separation between the curb and my foundation. So the capacity to actually add sidewalks is next to 0. I think that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputy? No? Thank you very much for your time today. John Hartley. John? No? Vishy Ramakrishnan? Good morning, Vishy.
Morning.
Please just settle in. You have 5 minutes to share your thoughts with us.
My name is Fishy. You can hear me, I think. I live on 209 Wheeler Avenue, right behind this building, 8-story building that we're talking about today. And I've got a couple of items that I want to raise, and I'll keep it very short and succinct for the benefit of everybody. So first thing, I want to reiterate what Marissa and Dave had mentioned. So basically, we understand that the front access for the cars and majority of the pedestrians are from Kingston Road. But the information we received is that for 7 units on this building, the access is through Wheeler. However, technically all 30 units will have access through Wheeler through parking level P2, which means that for every person in the 30 units and their family and friends, they're going to have access through Wheeler. They can come in and go as they please, which is going to considerably increase the traffic on Wheeler, both pedestrian and motorists. You saw the picture that Marissa pointed out. It's a very narrow street, and it doesn't have a good U-turn. Even the trucks that come in have to come in and back out. You can't just take a U-turn at all. It's going to change the way of our life. The children today play on the streets, and then they have like basketballs, and then they actually paint on the road itself. All of that is going to completely change. The way of living is going to change. And we already have parked cars that are full. If we increase the traffic, it's going to make it considerably difficult for all of us. That's the one point I wanted to make. And then the second point is that the setback. I think Marissa mentioned that as well. Today we have like trees there. If you have, from what we're seeing, that the setback is almost like zero. It's practically none. If you have a setback that is almost zero, you're going to have like an 8-story building right on the street that has not more than 2 or 3 stories. It's going to be completely looking different. And without the setback, without the trees, you're looking at like a big building propping up on a street that is pretty much like old-fashioned with 2 stories and old-fashioned homes. So that's a big concern that we have as well. These are my 2 main items that I want to bring up for your consideration. And the third, last but not the least, is the construction that Marissa pointed out. It's probably not for today, but for later, that once the building starts, if we're going to have all the trucks and constructions and coming in through Wheeler, especially with the narrow street, it's going to make it so hard for us to live there. So these are the 3 items I'd like to raise.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the deputy? No? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Andrew Forensic. Good morning, Andrew. You know the drill here.
Morning, I do.
Go ahead.
And I just have some graphics that I'd like to put up. So good morning, Mr. Chair and members of committee. My name is Andrew Franchik. I'm a principal with W&D Associates. I've been involved with this project personally since it was filed in 2016. Since that time, it's gone through a number of revisions. The initial proposal was for a 9-story building with 57 units. The current proposal is for an 8-story building with 30 units. So that's about almost reduced by half. And we felt that it was a very collaborative process, and we're pleased that planning staff is now in support. And just a few matters that I'd like to bring to your attention. The site is located on the south side of Kingston Road, and what's unique about Kingston Road is that it's actually an apartment corridor, essentially, but designated neighborhoods. And that was a unique aspect that staff took into their consideration on this application. And you could see the proposed development is at 7 stories with the 8 stories stepped back, and that was in direct discussions with city staff in order to decrease the size and prominence of that 8 stories so that the proposal is now very much in context with the other buildings on the street, which are also at 7 stories, 5 stories right adjacent. So it's been quite sensitively designed. There have been some light wells that have been designed in the middle of the building with secondary windows. There's a recommendation that we support to further refine that through the site plan process, perhaps with clear story windows. So there has been quite a bit of attention paid. There's also a terracing down, and I'd just like to address some of the comments made by the deputants about Wheeler Avenue. Wheeler Avenue is at the south end of the site. It is actually a through lot, and there's a significant grade change, and that's why the unique approach was required here. The back of the building is actually at a much lower elevation, and that means that the P1 and P2 levels are actually exposed. And so rather than essentially putting up a blank wall and exposing something unattractive to the end of the street, what's been done instead is that it's been skinned with 3 townhouse units. I think in the staff report it explained that there were more than that, but here is that ground floor plan, and it's townhouse unit 1, 2, 3, and they have direct access from the outside from the end of Wheeler. So those 3 units will have access out to the back of Wheeler as normal townhouses would if they address the neighborhood. And it is a townhouse scale. It is the back of the building, which terraces down to about 3 stories at that end of the site. And in terms of the access, there always was an access proposed since 2016. I was at the first public meeting, and there was significant opposition on the basis of a more formal access that we had, because we thought it would be a nice feature to have and an appropriate planning feature to have direct access through down to the lake for people who lived at this site. Now there are fewer units, and they still have some access, but it's just a secondary emergency access through the P2 garage. So someone would need to go through the building to the garage, walk through the garage and out. It's possible, and that access, I understand, is needed from an emergency perspective, and that's why it's being provided. But only the 3 townhouse units, and then the emergency access is being provided. So that, combined with the reduction in the units, is, in my opinion, gone a long way to addressing the comments that have been made by the community. So just in conclusion, it's my opinion that these amendments do meet the provincial policy framework, as well as the city's overall intent in your official plan for this corridor. And I'm happy to support those recommendations of staff and answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much for the deputation. Andrew, could you walk us through the intended or proposed access for the rest of the development?
The resident access?
The access for the development.
Sure. So the access is going to be primarily from Kingston Road. All vehicular access will be from Kingston Road, which is here. So right there is Kingston Road. This is the vehicular access, and the primary pedestrian access is from Kingston Road. It has a Kingston address, which means that any deliveries, drop-offs, or pickups will occur off of Kingston Road. And as you can see, this is the ground level. The ground level at the rear is actually elevated because of the grade change, but it's set back. So the lower level...
What is the grade change between Kingston down to Wheeler?
I think it's about 5 or 6 meters. It's about the equivalent of 2 stories, approximately. That's why the P1 and P2 levels are exposed, but they're skinned.
So if you were on Kingston Road and then you were on Wheeler, you think it's only 5 meters?
It's about 5 or 6. That's my understanding. I can check the site elevation.
I'll clarify with staff. And you've mentioned that it's 3 units skinning 3 towns?
Correct.
So when were these drawings submitted?
So these are the site plan drawings. I believe that they're consistent with the previous drawings that were prepared. They're actually 2-story units, so each unit has a 2nd story. Those are the 2nd stories.
And you've read it, and you've read the staff report?
Yes, I have.
Which doesn't say 3.
I believe it has more units, yes.
Was that something that you flagged for staff?
No, I did not.
Did you provide those comments and say, hey, actually it's 3, not 7?
No, in fact, I just noticed that.
Okay. Did you just read it this morning?
That part of it, yes.
Okay.
I'll be totally honest with you.
And I'll have to talk to staff about that. That's quite different.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks for the deputation.
Any further questions for the deputy? Seeing none, thank you very much. Stephen Gainshram. Hi, Stephen. Just want to settle in. You'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on the clock on the wall to my right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
My concerns are focused on the walkway to Wheeler. In the proposal, the zoning bylaws referenced are that of Kingston's, but having access to Wheeler means that the stricter zoning bylaws that govern that street should also be respected. There will be a direct impact to the neighborhood. I can point to a number of studies and stats that find that as population density increases, the rate of property crime increases as well. The variance in the zoning laws for Kingston are not as extreme as the variance in the Wheeler zoning. If all residents of the building have access to Wheeler, then the massing will affect the safety and character of the neighborhood. As for the positive impacts listed in the proposal, as for the positive impacts listed in the proposal, they do not hold up to any level of scrutiny. The building's proximity to Lee Avenue means that any impact listed for Wheeler would be the same for Lee, which is already used by the residents of the numerous mid-rises along Kingston to access Queen. The TTC operates 24 hours a day along Kingston. Meanwhile, it is a 15-minute walk to Queen. Therefore, there is no truth to the statement in the report that suggests the walkway would reduce car dependency. In fact, it will only increase car traffic in the area. The assumption that deliveries and pickups are based on address alone is naive. The way that apps work is that users can drop a pin on the map at any point, and if they want to use Wheeler as a pickup point, there is nothing stopping them. The non-existent positive impact of the walkway, combined with the stats-based and community-driven negative impact, makes it clear that there should only be one outcome to this. I strongly recommend that in the site plan approval process, this rear walkway is removed from the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you. Councillor Layton?
Yes, hi. You mentioned that you had some statistics that indicated there was a correlation between...
I can provide that.
Could you
Stats can, yeah.
Oh, using Statistics Canada?
Yes.
So,
I've provided that previously in an email to this procedure.
But are you suggesting that there's a correlation then between density and crime, or is
property crime? Yes, there is a correlation.
Really?
I can provide the stats.
But us pulling up some numbers on StatsCan and actually showing a correlation between the two are completely different things, right? You need some causal link there. You can't just kind of fabricate that and make that assertion and say you have lots of data to support that.
Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at data and I'm supporting that based on actual facts.
I find that terribly hard to believe.
Okay.
My apologies. I will, however, add that no.
No, we can talk about that later. Thank you very much. I think that's all your questions. Thank you, Stephen. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none. Questions of staff? No? Questions of staff? Councillor Bradford?
Thanks very much. Through the Chair to City Planning, could you just give us a quick overview of the application, history when it came to TUICC, when the file changed from one applicant to the other, and then what major changes have been incorporated? There's been two owners and two different designs. Thanks.
Through you, Chair. It was not me that received the initial application, but initially there was, as Andrew said, there was a 9-story proposal for 57 units. There was an iteration that came before Community Council prior to the close of council, prior to the election, that was seen. That was a 7-story iteration. It had a similar kind of rear access. It was reduced to 30 units at that point. We still had some issues regarding the overall built form, the angular planes, but the applicant had already reduced the intensity of the development from 57 to 30 units, and the rear access was providing to 4 townhouse units at the time, and then to the current iteration where it's still 30 units. We worked on the overall angular plane and built form, and although it was increased to 8 stories, that was because they had reduced the floor to ceiling heights. So the overall density was reduced, but they increased the amount of stories. And the access now to the rear is directly to the 3 townhouses that are on the main floor. And just want to address that as an error in the staff report.
We heard a little bit of concerns about some of the setback and the green space at the rear as it connects or rears with Wheeler. I know it's an unusual site with a significant grade change, not a ravine lot, but certainly a sort of ravine context. Can you talk about the measurement of the setback as it is adjacent to Wheeler?
You could see in the zoning diagrams the actual setbacks that they're going for. So it ranges from 2.8 on the eastern end of the building and increases up to 5 on the western end of the building. And that actually approaches a portion of the building that's 1 meter in height. And they continually set back the building as they increase the height. Yeah.
And where are you measuring, just to clarify, where are you measuring the setbacks from? Particularly as it relates to the Wheeler portion of the site?
From the front, through you, Mr. Chair, from the front of the property line fronting onto Wheeler Avenue.
If I may add to that, the setbacks of the development, as per the mid-rise guidelines, we also measured that actual setback from residential properties on Wheeler, and that's 7.5 meters of setback from the neighborhood property to the building face. And we further added that no windows and no balconies were allowed within 10 meters. So besides the 7.5 meters, an additional 2.5 meters setback was added to not allow any type of uses that will have windows directly facing Wheeler's Avenue.
Can you, just building on that, can you just very quickly explain how the site plan process contemplates keeping a green buffer for that portion of the site? Like you have that?
On the front or on the at the rear?
Right.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we plan on securing soft landscaping through the site plan process on the Wheeler Avenue frontage.
Great, thank you. Those are all my questions.
Councillor Fletcher.
That was a reduction from how many units? 57 to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from 57 units to 30.
Did you lose any affordable housing units when you had to make that, when the applicant made that reduction?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was none, no affordable units proposed from the initial.
Nothing was lost there.
No.
Okay, thank you.
No further questions to speak. Councillor Bradford.
Yep, thanks very much. I just have a motion recognizing we're doing the zoning, but with 2 recommendations to build off of the comments that we heard today. I want to thank the community for their involvement. This was an application that came forward prior to the election. As we've heard, it's had several iterations and evolutions over the years. And I do want to thank staff for their work on this as well. It's been contentious on a unique site and a unique context, and it's there's been learning for me. It's been very interesting, and really appreciate staff's commitment to working with everyone on this. As we heard from the deputations, it is a unique site and property. You have quite a significant grade change if you visit the site from Kingston Road down to Wheeler, and what makes it challenging is its front on Kingston, where we, certainly want to direct and see this sort of growth. But as you saw from the rendering there, it really does, and as the applicant described, it's contemplated as a through lot as it connects with Wheeler. So what we're trying to do here is put in some controls and security through the site plan process, making sure that it's just emergency access through Wheeler, and have the manager of transportation to remove the permit parking for this building, excluding it from the 9-seat area. That's all my comments.
Questions of the mover? Anyone else to speak? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, that takes us to item TE 12.9, residential demolition application 2452 Bloor. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, I have a motion on this. Okay, so this is to approve with conditions. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.10, residential demolition application 248 High Park Avenue. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, I have a motion on this item. Okay, so that's to approve with those conditions. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.11, residential demolition application 119 Portland Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cressy.
Yes, I'm going to have for item 11, 12, and 13 the same amendment. So here on 11, I can move recommendation 3, but I have an amendment first. So this is to permit with conditions, to approve with conditions, and I have an amendment to add an additional condition.
So E?
E is the additional amendment.
Wow. I'm going to make note of that.
It's a common Ward 10 item.
On the councillor's motion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.12, residential demolition application 121 Portland Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cressy.
Again, I'm going to move recommendation 3 with amendment E.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.13, residential demolition application 123 Portland Street. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. For the final time, I will move recommendation 3 to approve with amendment E.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.14, application to remove a private tree, 128 Milverton Boulevard. I have a deputant listed, Nancy Franklin.
Oh, where's Nancy?
Nancy?
I think I'm deferring this, and I've told the deputant that, Mr. Chair. I'm going
Sorry, deferring
the item.
for how long?
Well, I think it's indefinite, well, until I get a site visit with forestry. There you go. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I might not get out to see the tree before that time. So
you don't want to.
Defer until such time as a site
the
visit
same,
has
the site
occurred?
visit, yes. I'm sorry. My wires got crossed.
Okay. So, members deferring the item until such time as a site visit has occurred. All those in favor, opposed, carried.
Thank you, sorry.
Item TE 12.15, refusal of a Boulevard Cafe permit application located at 796 Bloor Street West, Crawford Street flankage. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none.
So we're awaiting a petition from neighbors because the poll was not successful, and so we hope to have that soon, but we don't have it yet. So if we could defer it for 2 cycles.
Are you saying that in this instance, the reason that you can't deal with the item is that the polling, there's been a petitioning problem?
Not necessarily a problem, but yes, the petition was, or the poll was a problem.
The poll was a problem. I see.
Okay.
Who knew?
Without a poll.
Good for you for doing it nonetheless.
Okay, so you're...
To the March meeting.
Pardon me?
To the March meeting.
March meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item TE 12.16, issuance of a Boulevard Cafe permit located at 12 Clinton Street.
This I'll be asking for.
Have a deputant listed?
He has declined to depute this time around. Yes.
Okay.
Evan's left.
So you're going to be doing what?
I'm going to defer it to the March meeting as well.
Defer this one to the March meeting?
No one wants
All
to
those
sit
in
on a
favor?
patio in February anyhow, so.
Yeah, not me. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item TE 12.17, refusal of a sidewalk boulevard vending permit application located at 2575 Danforth Avenue, 16.50 meters east of Main Street on the south side of Danforth Avenue. I did have a deputant listed, but they've withdrawn. Is there anyone who does want to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Bradford.
I would like to move the staff recommendations for refusal, please.
The staff recommendation to refuse.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 12.18, report on the cancellation of the Union Station Sidewalk Boulevard vending locations due to the closure of Front Street West adjacent to the north side of 61 Front Street West between York Street and Bay Street. Sometimes staff give me tongue twisters.
Say it really fast.
Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none. Councillor Cressy.
I will move the staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item TE 12.19, Commercial Boulevard Parking Appeal, 170 Bedford Road, fee calculation and alternative use option. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? I got to say, I've never had one like this before, but it's in Councillor Layton's hands, so we'll see how it goes.
We have repeatedly tried to reach out to the person who originally asked for the this parking area. They have declined to give us direction. I've given an alternative that won't cost them $30,000 to put two spots on their front boulevard, and they didn't give us any direction. So I'll adopt the staff recommendations to receive the report.
On the staff recommendation to receive, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 12.28, Danforth Avenue Planning Study, City-Initiated Official Plan Amendment, Preliminary Report, Broadview Avenue to Coxwell. Oh, we already done that. I'm sorry.
You're so fast.
Okay. Yonge St. Clair Planning Framework? That's it.
19 we've done, yep, we should be there.
Okay, so TE 12.30, Yonge St. Clair Planning Framework. I have some deputants listed. Michael Vaughn. Michael?
I just told her.
Oh, okay. So Michael's sitting out there? Now might be a moment for quiet personal meditation and reflection.
Did you want to lead us in one?
Personal,
Personal.
quiet. Are you Michael? Michael left? There's no Michaels? Okay. Next, I had Cynthia Chrysler. Hi, Cynthia. Please just come take a seat up here. Settle in. Sorry.
We're both
Kathy,
part
did
of
you
the.
want to depute together?
I meant to send that to him.
Yes?
And I-
5 minutes each?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll just, as a matter of form, call Cynthia first.
Sure.
Cynthia, there's a microphone in front of you. Make sure the button is lit up.
It's red.
Okay, good.
That's good.
And you'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on the clock on the wall to my right.
Okay.
Please begin.
Okay, so my name is Cynthia Chrysler. I'm president of the Deer Park Residents Group and here on their behalf. I wanted to just take a moment to speak about the group. We're a more mature residents group. We're fortunate to have quite a few architects, people with development experience, as well as people who've been in the area for quite some time on our board and on our development committee. And we've spent a fair amount of time involved in the consultation process for the planning framework. And have been very fortunate with our interactions with Josh Matlow, our councillor, and the staff. So we really appreciate all the commitment to consultation, and we will continue to engage in that. Our group is fairly strong, and I would say, though, based on the public consultation in October, that the views of our board and our group are very consistent with what we heard from other residents. So I would just want to make sure it's understood that we represent really more than just our membership. We're trying to represent the entire area. And we put in a written submission and then a response to the planning framework, which I'm sure you have in front of you. So I won't read through it. But I just wanted to highlight a few points. And the first one is that we want to make sure that the current population of our group is taken into account when we're talking about growth and increasing density. We haven't seen what the city's views are on that. We've had our own information based on Envirotics information. And our point in raising that is to make sure that when we have applications in front of us that are going to be within the area for the planning framework that would possibly raise our population by 50%, that the kinds of development, like infrastructure development that needs to come with that are considered. We already have residents who regularly are unable to get on the subway, who are constrained as far as traffic and all the rest. So we want to make sure that if we're going to grow that much, that we really consider what that means to our community and our neighborhood and make sure that we're dealing with those impacts. We wanted to reinforce our concern about setbacks. There is reference in the planning framework document to those setbacks, and we understand the parameters around what can be said about that. The reason that we wanted to reinforce that point is that the stretch of Yonge Street in particular that we have in our neighborhood is very narrow. The sidewalks are very narrow. And we're just concerned about the future needs of those stretches and want to make sure that that's an issue that's really well understood, that if we decide in 5 years that we really need more sidewalk space and there's already several buildings up, we're sort of stuck. So we just want to make sure that that's on the minds of the staff and the developers as they are putting in their applications. Next point is wanted to make sure there was an appreciation of our concern about the height of towers. We understand there will be growth in our area. We understand there's an interest in towers. We are just concerned that the height has certain impacts. It throws shadows on the churches in the area, potentially the ravine in the area, and generally on the rest of the residents that are already there. So we want to make sure that that is very carefully considered. Current approvals are for heights of 37 stories. We are very concerned to the extent it goes over that. I didn't know if Kathy do you want us to be very separate in our submission?
Tell you what, you just make yours.
Okay.
When you're done, let me know.
Okay, and then she can, okay.
And then she'll and I'll ask you to take questions together. How's that?
Okay, sure. Finally, just wanted to mention, we understand that there will be a transportation study in our area, and we're very supportive of that. Don't want to take too much more time on that because we know it's underway and it's going in the right direction. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Kathy?
Just to add a few comments, we've been very pleased with the interest of residents in our neighborhood and with the support of the planners who we are really responding to the issues we raise. Like the transportation study issue was really not on the agenda, and now it's forefront because of the street configuration in the area and the problems there. Also worked with planners to improve the information on the maps so that residents can understand the maps, particularly in respect to how the issues of height are shown, because that's such a critical a component to the area. And we understand that this study is the beginning of a more comprehensive secondary plan review for Yonge and St. Clair, which we really appreciate because of the growth potential of the neighborhood and the interest of residents in making sure it keeps being the livable area that we really appreciate and think is a model of mixes of uses and housing types for the city.
Are there any questions for either Cynthia or Kathy? No? Thank you so much for coming down and sharing your thoughts with us today. John Tarano. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
All right, so my name is John Taranu. I am a member and a board member of the DPRG, as well as Street Safety Committee from Fontra, and I'm a member of Cycle Toronto Midtown as well. I am making this deputation as an individual, although what I'm going to say is going to be tightly aligned to what we've heard from the DPRG and Cycle Toronto Midtown. I just wanted to reiterate that the planners working on this study have done a fantastic job of listening to the community's feedback and our needs. When it comes to street safety and transportation, however, these two, after development, are the top two concerns in our neighborhood. Study after study, meeting after meeting, these issues are always popping up. And at Yonge and St. Clair, we have a 50-year-old street design that is no longer meeting the needs of our community. It hasn't been designed for safety, it's not working for transportation, and it's a challenge getting through in one piece. We have a lot of people walking. It's one of two intersections north of Bloor, anywhere in the city, that have more pedestrians than vehicles. There's kids, seniors, people going to work that are not safe getting around. There's a lot of people driving through the neighborhood. There's a lot of automobile traffic that is increasingly having a hard time getting around. We have people on bikes that have no provision for safety whatsoever, and all kinds of new mobility modes are going to be coming down the pipeline. Things like kick scooters, electric bicycles, motorized wheelchair. There's no room for them. Delivery vehicles are littering the streets. We have servicing challenges, vehicle loading. And on top of this, it's not working today. In the next few years, we're going to be adding thousands of people, adding another 50% of the population around Yonge and St. Clair. And the challenges we face at Yonge and St. Clair are a little bit different than other neighborhoods. Unlike the downtown, we actually don't have as many streets. There's no alternates. You have Yonge, you have St. Clair. That's it. Their street right-of-way is incredibly narrow like the downtown, so we don't have that much extra room to play with. And we're not building new streets here anytime soon. So to deal with this, thankfully, we've been working with Councillor Matlow to look at starting up some transportation studies. They're overdue. We're going to have the Yonge and St. Clair neighborhood transportation study starting up next year, hopefully, and followed by the multi-corridor study looking at Yonge and Avenue Mount Pleasant in 2021. These should have started earlier. They didn't. So we don't know what the recommendations are. We don't know what the needs are for reconfiguring these streets for better transportation and safety. Right now, we're making transportation decisions, or we're making planning decisions that will guide the development of Yonge and St. Clair for the next 50 years. We need to make sure we do it right, not just for this generation, but for future generations. Because we don't know what the transportation recommendations are, the prudent thing to do is to ensure that we are protecting the space for future needs. So that's why we have a number of people, not just myself, others have asked, get as much space as we can from the future developments so that when we decide what we need to do with the streets, we have that space available. The ask has been for 8 meters total, 5 meters from the property line, which is a bit more than what the city standards are of 6 meters total. Once we do the transportation studies in 2 years, then we'll know maybe that space can be used for things like street safety improvements. Maybe it's going to be additional space for pedestrians. Maybe it's things like mobility lanes. Maybe it's actually public realm that will be given for things like patios and planters. We just don't know. So considering the needs of the future today is important so that we can make Yonge and St. Clair to be safe, welcoming, inclusive, and prosperous for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, seeing none. Thank you very much for your thoughts today. Mackenzie Keast. Good morning, Mackenzie. Still morning for another 10 minutes.
All right. Good morning, Chair, members of the Toronto and East York Community Council. Thank you for having me today to speak on this important matter before you. I also want to specifically thank Councillor Matlow and his amazing staff for their care and attention to this file, the numerous public and stakeholder consultations that they have hosted for this matter, and the real commitment that they've shown to making sure everyone's coming to the table and helping to contribute to a vibrant and successful future for the Yonge and St. Clair area. So thank you very much. Members of Council, my name is Mackenzie Keast. I am the Executive Director of the Yonge and St. Clair Business Improvement Area. The Yonge and St. Clair BIA is among the city's newest BIAs, formed in 2018, and represents one of the most important intersections and commercial hubs in Toronto. Each workday, Yonge St. Clair welcomes nearly 15,000 employees to over 450 businesses in the neighborhood. Office vacancy rates over the past few years have hovered around 2%, comparable to downtown and financial district vacancies, and affirming the interest and desire of employers and their employees to do business and come to work in this incredible community. Residential uses also form an important part of this mixed and varied area, with an incredible existing residential population who are frequent repeat customers of our local stores, and growing interest by the development community and ultimately future residents who see this neighborhood as a great place to not only work but to also live and raise a family in. Yonge and St. Clair is also one of Toronto's best connected neighborhoods when it comes to transit, representing the intersection of the St. Clair streetcar and Line 1 subway line. Indeed, a significant number of employees and visitors to this community come by transit, starting or ending their trips by foot on the neighborhood's many sidewalks. This public space and the pedestrian environment is one of the Yonge and St. Clair BIA's most urgent priorities, giving us an opportunity to improve the public realm and make our community a safer and more attractive place to shop, work, and do business. It's why one of our first initiatives was to launch our Streetscape Master Plan, forming a guiding document for consistent street and sidewalk details in the area, together with over $4.5 million worth of BIA-led public realm improvement projects to take place over the next 10 years. The Streetscape Master Plan was developed by the BIA through extensive consultation with our member businesses and property owners, local residents, stakeholder groups, and our municipal partners. Separately, Council rightly directed staff to undertake a new planning framework for the area to help shape new built form as well as the public realm. This has been an intensive process that myself and our BIA board has been proud to be a part of, and we're excited to be here today to see it come closer to its completion. The BIA, however, requests that prior to the endorsement of this planning framework that staff include the following 3 refinements, and this is just a summary of what was included in my letter to you that I sent yesterday through the clerk. So first, we ask that some manner of implementation be spoken to in this document. I understand in my conversations with the project team that these are guidelines that are outside typical implementation instruments, but we do feel it's important to provide some sort of context as to how staff and council expect this document to be utilized. Further, we feel that the implementation of this document can include a directive to new applicants for development in the area alongside city staff during the review of their review process to consult with the BIA in order to align public realm plans with our own Streetscape Master Plan. This will ensure that we can coordinate on our shared goals to improve the public environment of Yonge and St. Clair and help us potentially reduce costly delays, overlaps, or oversights. Secondly, we ask that the planning framework include broader recognition of a mix of built form. This was something heavily recognized during the October 24, 2019 draft presentation of this framework, but is somewhat absent from the final report. Specifically, we'd like to see the inclusion of language that accommodates for a wide range of new commercial unit types and users, including opportunities for local and independent businesses. While new growth will always mean new and expanding types of retail users, we feel it's important to at least recognize and aim to support opportunities for the local and independent retailers in this community. Finally, we ask that the implementation of the Yonge and St. Clair BIA's street improvements envisioned through our Streetscape Master Plan be part of the objectives of all big moves identified in the planning framework. While it is tangentially included in some of these sections, we feel this language should be expanded such that there is a wide recognition in this document of the BIA Streetscape Master Plan and the design details that we have identified within it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions? No, seeing none, thank you. That's my full list of registered deputants. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, any questions of staff? No? To speak, Councillor Matlow.
So I have motions to add to the recommendations. And I want to begin by thanking our community, led by the Deer Park Residents Group, who I've worked incredibly closely with, both to initiate the framework study to begin with, but also on a wide array of different priorities in the neighborhood, often on an ad hoc basis, but on this, a more holistic and comprehensive view on how our area is going to grow. I also want to thank the BIA, Mackenzie, and the entire board for their dedication to improving the main streets, which are our village main streets. They both serve as the heart of the City of Toronto, but they also are the local Deer Park and Summerhill neighborhood main streets where people run into each other and shop, and we want it to be vibrant and successful. And I can commit to them that as we move forward, they, as they always have been, will be right at the table, both literally and figuratively, when we are discussing how the area is going to grow. And I want to thank staff, David Dreger, Kevin Friedrich, Oren Tamir, and everyone involved in planning on being so receptive to our requests and working so respectfully and with such focus on ensuring that the engagement that we've asked for has been seen through to fruition. And with such, I think, very solid recommendations within, I think, admittedly, the limited realm of power that the City of Toronto has over planning matters today. This phase is a first phase. So the framework is primarily about improved public realm, as John Turano alluded to earlier, ensuring that the public realm is not only improved for today, but also to ensure that that we create opportunities for a multimodal Yonge and St. Clair in the future, improved public realm for all users. And it's about built form. Yonge and St. Clair is a really special area. It's got a number of Art Deco buildings. It's got this kind of cool. A columnist I once referred to it as sort of the crooner of Toronto. Crooner, yeah. Glenn Gould lived in the area. I used to hang out at the Old Franz, which is now a pub on the south side of St. Clair. There's something just really, really unique about it. And over several years, developers would buy up property after property after property to consolidate them to build something in the future. But what happened was the neighborhood that we knew and loved in past years, the Bregmans, the cinemas, all of that. You remember Bregmans? My parents used to take me there when I was a kid, and that was lost. And I think there's a consensus in the area, whether you consider yourself pro-development or anti-development or somewhere in between, that the status quo isn't good enough anymore, that there needs to be some redevelopment, that it is tired and it needs to grow and change. The debate, obviously, is what does that look like? And what we want to make sure of is that that growth is respectful to the neighborhoods in the community. As Cynthia said earlier, that it has built right into it the assurance of sufficient infrastructure, great public realm, services. So whether you have two people or 2 million people in any given part of our city, that everybody should be able to access their local school. Everyone should be able to get onto transit. Everyone should have a library nearby. Everybody should have childcare. That's what we all want for our neighborhoods, and that's what we're working on through these initiatives. The next phase of it is, in my motion, is to review the apartment neighborhoods because we are having more and more infill pressure within our apartment neighborhoods, and that has to be a priority for us. And then lastly, the transportation study, which is important because not only do we want to make sure that we have transportation flowing in the future, but we're already having issues that are exacerbated by the pressure today. I'll end with this because I've got a lot that I wanted to cover, and I'm getting signals from the chair that he wants us to move on. There is going to be much more work to do to make sure that the vision that we have through this framework is seen through to fruition, but we're going to have to work together with the development partners in the area, the BIA, the residents, and all of us to ensure that how the area grows is for the community. And we are going to work together to see that through. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the mover? Seeing none. Anyone else to speak? No. We'll take the amendments and the item together. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Members, it's conceivable we'll be done by 12:30. We have a few things left to do. We're not ready to introduce Councillor Fletcher's motion yet?
It's being photocopied. Sure, you can introduce.
Okay, so I have 3 things to introduce.
59 to 62.
Items 59 through 62. Can I have a motion to introduce them? Councillor Fletcher. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We now go to TE 12.37. Toronto East York Collector Road speed limit reductions as part of Vision Zero speed management strategy. Members, I had the clerk circulate the motions that were in our hands at the beginning of the meeting.
Councillor Bradford's has been revised.
And Councillor Bradford's has been revised.
A couple of times, so I've get.
A couple of times.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, yeah.
It's being copied and circulated.
Yeah,
I'm looking askance at the transportation staff. Askance. So we do need to move.
Yeah.
We do need members to move. I will move Councillor Bailau's motion. The Toronto East York amend it by reducing the limit to 30 for 4 specific streets. Councillor Wong-Tam, you had a motion?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I do have a motion. The clerk can put that on the screen if they like, but I think it's already advanced.
Councillor Bailau's up?
Yes.
Okay. Now Councillor Wong-Tam.
I actually have 2 motions. The first one lists 14 different streets in Ward 13 where we would like to see it moved from 40 kilometers and have the speed reduced to 30 kilometers. And then the second motion, if the clerks can put that on the screen, is to have the transportation service staff as well as the Director of Project and Design and Management through Transportation Services report back to this Community Council on recommendations to reduce the speed on Bay Street, Jarvis Street, and Jarvis Street South from to 30 kilometers per hour. I'm just going to note that we've had some very high-profile collisions over the past year. Some of it has resulted in tragic deaths. On Jarvis Street alone, over the past 5 years, we've had 3 fatalities, including pedestrians killed in 2016, 2017, and most recently, you would have heard on the news just over the weekend, 15 people who were injured seriously by just trying to make their way across Jarvis Street. On Bay Street, we've had 1 fatality, a pedestrian who was struck in 2017 and who ultimately succumbed to those serious injuries. And then we had 10 individuals who were seriously injured, and this does not include those individuals who were perhaps in collision, but walked away and decided not to report. Overall, we have seen a number of community members as well as business stakeholders who all alert to the fact that the speeds on Jarvis and Bay Street are too fast. I just want to cite that I'm not moving to reduce the speed immediately because it is a bus route, but I am asking for transportation service staff to come back and report on how we can make that area safer by reducing the speed. Thank you.
Councillor Cressy's next. Councillor Cressy, you have a motion?
I do, if it can be put on the screen. And this is to ensure that all the streets that are outlined are at 30K.
Councillor Layton, you have a motion?
Yes, thank you very much. It has the same effect to add some streets to the list to move from 50 to 30 kilometers per hour.
Councillor Bradford, you have a revised motion?
I do.
Yep. Revised motion on the screen, same effect. Thank you.
Does that have to go to council?
No. So it's, Councillor Fletcher, I understand, but you can bring any streets you wish to do at any time, so it can be done next meeting by letter.
I'm sorry. I think it was
We
your
just don't
last meeting.
have,
and
we
didn't
went
report.
through the record of what we had from last meeting, and that's all we have. Okay, so we'll deal with it at a future date. Okay, we're good. So why don't we take all of the motions as a package?
Are we done? Sorry, just a moment.
We got Councillor Bradford's revised. Yep, we got them all that I've been handed.
I'm waiting for a list from staff, but
That's it?
there was a staff
Okay.
recommendation.
So taking this plus the staff recommendation all as a package, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay, that takes me to TE 12.59, which is Councillor Fletcher. You have a letter.
Yes, I'd like to ask for support for that letter.
Okay, so on the recommendation in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. On TE 60, Councillor Cressy.
I would like to move the recommendations in my letter, please.
On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Councillor Cressy. 6-1.
I would like to move the
Parking
recommendation.
on Little Norway Crescent.
Yes, I would like to move the recommendations in my letter, please.
Okay, so Councillor Fletcher has a letter reviewing the proposed security upgrades at Toronto East York Community Council. Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, introducing this because government
And
management.
introduced, now we can.
And you're on that, Councillor Matlow, is making a recommendation, and we do have a lot of people that come to our committee, and I think we should understand exactly what the implications of that might be able to recommend, because when you have 100, there's often more people at our committee than are at City Council or at other standing committees. In fact, even today, there were more that were at government management and also at, so I think that's pretty important that we have this and that Council actually wait to hear any recommendations to make sure that the most open level of government remains as open as possible.
Yeah. And I would just add that this is actually the forum where a number of statutory meetings take place.
Correct.
Which is the only legal place that members of the community can be engaged in certain decisions. And I'm deeply concerned about adding any kind of barriers to access to that decision-making process. So thank you, Councillor Fletcher, for bringing this. I'll be supporting it wholeheartedly. So you know what? I would actually like to record this vote.
Okay, go ahead.
So, all those in favor, Councillor Cressy, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Perks, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Layton, Councillor Matlow. That is unanimous. And I believe that concludes.
Could I just clarify on the streets, please? Because my streets are in the report, but I'm waiting for staff for a full list. And I
So
haven't
we got
yet
some
got
of your
that
streets
yet.
done, but there may be
Correct.
some more work
There
to do
are,
at a later
hopefully,
date.
I'll be getting that
I
from
think I
staff.
find myself in the same position.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think we just have bills now. Look at that. We're going to get done before the lunch break. It's because of the extraordinarily discipline and efficacy of members of this community council and the city staff. Support it.
Councillor Fletcher, do you mind doing the confirmatory after Councillor Wong-Tam?
So, Councillor Wong-Tam, you have a motion.
Yes, I move that the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bills 24 to 70 prepared for the January 8, 2020 meeting 12 of the Community Council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Fletcher, you have a motion.
Yes, I do, that the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Toronto and East York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 12 on January 8th, 2020.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Members, that concludes our business. Have a wonderful day.
It confirms what you said earlier, that we have to have a confirming bill because we passed legislative statutory.